Katie Cornetto is the attorney for the State Board of Education. And ma'am, you wrote the model employment teacher contract that's going to have so many teachers' attention.
It is, and I work closely with staff and folks across the state for input in order to put a contract together that makes sense and that works according to law. And the General Assembly required this of the State Board of Education, so we're happy to comply.
Did you talk to teachers groups? Who'd you talk to?
We absolutely did. We consulted with North Carolina Association of Educators and Professional Educators of North Carolina, two large teacher organizations in the state of North Carolina. In addition, our staff went across the state and asked for input from local superintendents, local boards of education, and we definitely listened, and we tried to walk the tightrope to make everyone satisfied with the end product.
When it comes to crafting the contract, were there different objectives? Teachers want some things, superintendents want more powers. How did it balance out when you're taking in the input?
Well, notably, the State Board of Education is not a party to this contract. The local boards of education contract with the teachers, and so those are the parties to the contract. This contract was actually drafted in such a way that they could actually come up with their own terms of employment depending on the teaching assignment and depending on their role in the school district.
Local school districts can change this. This is a framework to be added to or subtracted from, or how?
I would call it the model in that it's a template, if you will, that the terms can be specified at the local level in order to give the local districts the maximum amount of flexibility.
So just because it's about a page long doesn't mean your local county will make it 4 or 5 pages if they so choose.
My understanding is that local contracts tend to be very minimal, and the law is actually very specific about teacher duties and obligations, as well as what the local boards have to do. So I don't suspect that it will be much more than this.
Term number 1, a lot of blank lines there. So as the law came out, it was a 1 to 4 year contract that stuck. The local school district will sit down with a teacher and say, you're good enough for a 2-year deal or a 4-year deal. Is that how it plays out at the local level?
So local boards make decisions based on staff and superintendent recommendations about how to structure their employment. Some teachers may be given a 1-year contract, some may be awarded a 4-year contract, depending on what the local boards decide as the parameters for that. Do they sit down and talk to each individual teacher one by one? I think that's more handled at the principal school level about the specific teaching assignments, but the local boards ultimately approve all the contracts.
And I see a lot of directives, so school boards may do this or that with an employment contract subject to state law. So if school boards want to get more in depth in this contract, they have to go through all these general statutes and get this right.
Absolutely. They all have very capable legal staff that work with them to make sure that they're in compliance with the law. And as the law changes, the provisions in the contract would change.
How do you keep politicians and people from bending your ear and trying to sway you one way or the other in drafting a model contract?
We listen to everyone. It's very simple. And everyone has some valid input and pointers to consider. But ultimately, knowing from the state board level what works for school districts and school systems, we've really tried to take that into account as reflected in the template.
Is your job now finished and now it's up to state lawmakers to look at their local school boards to see how they implement this model employment contract?
Again, my job is ever evolving. Currently, this model contract will have to go through the rulemaking process as required by law, and that is an evolving process. So the initial take on teacher contracts has been started, and that we will be watching and waiting to see what, if anything, needs to change over time.
And you will come back to the legislature if so called and report back.
Absolutely.
Ms. Cornetto, I appreciate you being on, explaining it 1 page. The lawmakers on both sides thought it was very simple, thought you drafted a rather, I'll say simple, but a very straightforward plan, and we'll see how it implements.
Thank you very much.